Good.
You're not hard to listen to.
Oh, good.
I agree.
Oh, good. Um, well, last week, remember, the big takeaway from last week was that Jesus' model prayer. Do y'all remember that? His model prayer.
Yeah, you go over it.
Oh, good. And that is the prayer that we are to use, and it gives us two things that we can get from that prayer. We're not going to change the mind of God. So that's the one thing that, that's always the question. Well, why pray if we can't change God's mind? Because if you pray, he says the prayers of a righteous man availeth much. So he wants us to pray, and you still might be thinking, but why if he's not going to change his mind? Because if you pray, then whatever you're facing, he will give you strength to get through it. That's a guarantee, and he will go through it with you. So, and the third reason to pray is because as we pray, because we're talking to the Father, it's communication, it goes back and forth, we get to know the mind of God. He lets us know through prayer what he's thinking. And you know what I mean by that. If you are like me, I start up here with my prayers. This is all the things I want. Okay? And hopefully by the time I get through praying, I'm down to, oh, your will be done, not mine. But I start up here, with my desires. And so, we get to know the mind of God. So that's why pray. And then his model prayer of, if Jesus can ask that he not have to go to the cross, what question is there that we can't ask God? We can ask him anything, even if it's wrong, y'all. Because, in fact, God couldn't say yes, but if Jesus didn't go to the cross, that would have been wrong, because he said he was going to. It would have been wrong. So even if it's wrong, you can talk to God about it. And that's the whole thing. He just wants us to talk to him about whatever our prayer is. And so you can't pray wrong. Now, you can leave the prayer and not hear from God. I mean, that's between you and the Spirit, because, we can all ask for things and not want to hear God's will at all. But if we continue praying, he guarantees us those things. He's going to be with us. He's going to strengthen us through our trial, because he may not be telling us yes, and we get to know the mind of God. So that's pretty important things. Okay, and that brings us to this week. So they've just finished the prayers. The disciples kept falling asleep. I also love it that they fell asleep how many times? 3 times. And what did they hear every time before they went to sleep? The model prayer. Not my will, but your will be done. I mean, he was facing his roughest time. And really, physically, he did not want to go to the cross. If this cup can be passed from me, let it be passed. But not my will, but your will be done. And that, I'm sure you've all prayed that prayer before. That's how you get through tough times. That's what Jesus was doing, getting through a very tough time. Okay, so that's just occurred, and the next thing that happens is Judas is there. And so that's what we are getting ready to look at today. We're going to begin with Matthew 26:45. Does anybody have those notes?
Yes, I have.
Oh, good, Donette, go for it.
Then he came to the disciples and said to them, "Are you still sleeping and resting? Behold, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is being betrayed into the hands of sinners. Get up, let us be going. Behold, the one who betrays me is at hand." While he was still speaking, behold, Judas, one of the 12, came up accompanied by a large crowd with swords and clubs, who came from the chief priests and elders of the people. Now he who was betraying him gave him a sign, saying, "Whomever I kiss, he is the one. Seize him." Immediately Judas went to Jesus and said, "Hail, Rabbi," and kissed him. And Jesus said to him, "Friend, do what you have come to do. Come forth." Then they came and laid hands on Jesus and seized him.
Okay. And Jesus has just shortly before this occurrence told the disciples that he was going to be handed over for crucifixion. And that's important because you know how everybody says the Jews crucified Jesus? Guess what? The Jews did convict him, handed him over to the Gentiles, the Romans. So they were both culpable in Jesus' death, the Jews and the Gentiles. That means we're, you know, as Gentiles included in that. So that was important, that not just the Jews handed him over. All right, so Judas comes up and he has made a deal to get some money and betray Jesus. They needed someone to betray Jesus and say who he was because the Romans couldn't recognize him. And so they needed someone to identify him. As we've talked about, Jesus had the power to stop what was going on, but his perfect will was God's perfect will, and that was that he would go to the cross for us. He didn't go hide. He went to the garden as usual. That's where he usually went to pray, in the garden, and that's where Judas knew he would be. So he's there. He's not trying to run away. John tells us that a crowd of a Roman cohort, which could be anywhere from 200 to 600 people, came for Jesus, came for one man. Okay? That's a little ridiculous. Even if it was just 200, that's a little ridiculous for one man. But this is during Passover, and during Passover, this was kind of when everybody maybe rioted a little bit. This is when they're remembering that they were set free from slavery, and but now they are under Roman government, and so they're not happy about that. So if they're going to act out a little bit, this would be the time that they would be a little acting out, protesting them being under the Romans. The Romans hated anything that broke the peace. So they would want to squash even the inkling of a rebellion. And if they heard that there was an instigator, they would try to put it down immediately. If they heard that someone was seeking to become the king of Israel, okay, well then that implicates that, okay, the people in power now might be changed. So that would be a red flag for them. The high priest did not go to arrest Jesus because it was Passover time and he would become unclean. He was feared that he might come in contact with someone and become unclean. So he sent his slave to go instead. Also with this cohort was the Jewish authorities, the Jewish police force, Caiaphas' slaves, members of the Sanhedrin. So a lot of people went to the arrest of Jesus. The high council of the Jewish rulers was the temple guard, and like I said, they were all there. Y'all, this was at night. Guess what one of the laws says about arresting people at night? You're not supposed to do it. But all these Jewish leaders are doing what? Breaking the law to get Jesus. And they don't mind breaking the law to do something they want to accomplish. Because the Romans need a positive ID, Judas is there. Now, Judas thinks he's being pretty slick. He has told the Romans, the one who I kiss is the one that you arrest. But he's doing this, he goes a little ahead of the Romans, and he gets there, and he goes up to Jesus as if he's just being friendly, like, hey, friend, gives him a kiss, so that the other people don't know he's with the Romans. And then he turns around and, oh, look, there's Roman guards here. So he's just trying to be slick. He's not very slick, especially because Jesus calls him out. Let's see, but he wanted plausible deniability in front of the other disciples. So now we're at Luke 22:47.
While he was still speaking, behold, a crowd came, and the one called Judas, one of the 12, was preceding them, and he approached Jesus to kiss him. But Jesus said to him, Judas, are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss? Okay,
so see, Jesus calls him out immediately. And he asked this question because he wants the other disciples to perceive what's really coming down. You know, because I can't believe they don't even suspect Judas all this time. You know, you would think there would have been something in his character that would
Seems
have,
like he's been a shady character, and then he was called out basically at the Last Supper,
uh-huh,
and oh guys, like he's telling y'all.
yeah, yeah. John's gospel tells us that even before Judas gets a chance to kiss Jesus, Jesus identifies himself to the Romans. He asked the Romans, "Who are you seeking?" When they said Jesus of Nazareth, he says, "I am." You know, I had never seen this in the Bible before. He says, "I am." And at that moment, those 200 members of the cohort and all the people who were there fell on their bottom ends. Fell. Have y'all heard that before?
No.
I know I've read it and
it
never absorbed.
I
You
know.
I just got through doing the Bible read, and I don't think I realized that.
I know, fell. I mean, y'all, that's a lot of people to fall at one time. Over at least
Yeah.
200, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Fell at one time. So if Jesus wanted to escape when they all fell, you think he could have escaped? The reason they fell is when he said, "I am," the power of God. Anytime we've seen the burning bush, what are some other instances where this is God, you know, I am, this is God, and he is powerful, and he can do all these things. What's another sign that we've seen besides the burning bush? I don't know. I have to listen to the lesson again to remember.
When he came out and it's like when Moses, right? Moses couldn't even look on him.
Right. But anyway, just saying that the name was powerful enough for them all to fall. They get back onto their feet, and Jesus, just by that, makes it clear he's not being taken to the cross. He is going himself to the cross. He goes up to Judas and he says, "Friend, do what you came for." In other words, he's being a little sarcastic to Judas. You know, do what you came for. The disciples finally get it that Judas is betraying Jesus. And at this, Luke says that they want to help him. Then do you want our help? Do you want us? You want us to do something? And so we're at Luke 22:49.
When those who were around him saw what was going to happen, they said, "Lord, shall we strike with the sword?"
Okay. Surely they knew that Jesus had the power to escape this if they wanted to. Hey, who has been taking care of them all this time? They've not even carried a sword until extremely recently, like in the last several hours, I think, maybe days. But Jesus has been protecting them at all times. Jesus has been providing their sustenance as well for them. Now, it may be through offerings or whatever, but Jesus has been their provider and their protector the whole time that he's been with them. So surely they understood that he had some power, and that if he didn't want to be arrested, he could not be arrested. Luke 22:35.
And he said to them, "When I sent you out without a money belt and bag and sandals, you did not lack anything, did you?" And they said, "No, nothing." And then he said to them, "But now, whoever has a money belt is to take it along, likewise also a bag. And whoever has no sword is to sell his coat and buy one. For I tell you that this which is written must be fulfilled in me." And he was numbered with transgressors, for that which refers to me has its fulfillment. They said, "Lord, look, here are 2 swords." And he said to them, "It is enough."
Okay, so Jesus here is warning them that they're fixing to have to take care of themselves. And he's not saying go out there and fight. He's saying you can defend yourself, if you need to. But he's letting them know things are really fixing to change. You're fixing to kind of be in charge of yourself. They would need money now. They've never really needed money before, but they were going to need some money to provide again for themselves. Matthew 26:51.
Behold, one of those who were with Jesus reached and drew out his sword and struck the slave of the high priest and cut off his ear.
Okay. Well, Jesus was just about to tell them this was not the time for a sword, but before he could get it out of his mouth, Peter does his thing. Okay, let's think about Peter for a minute. Peter has been told, Jesus called him out, and he's been told, you're going to deny me 3 times. Peter's probably been brooding on that for a while and thinking, no, I'm not, you know, and
He's wanting to prove himself real bad.
he's really wanting to prove himself real bad. And so here's the opportunity. And he takes out his sword and he cuts off the man's ear. Guess which man? The slave of the priest. Guess which man probably doesn't have any weapons on him? The slave cannot carry a weapon. So brave Peter goes and attacks the only unarmed man and cuts off his ear. And if that was meant to save Jesus, well, we just don't know. However, we are actually glad that nothing more than that happened, because Peter's impetuousness could have caused some real problems. It could have caused everybody to get arrested all at once. It could have caused someone to die, you know, and then Peter would not be able to be the head of the church. So it could have caused real problems. When we jump ahead of God and do our thing, it can cause problems. But Peter finally gets his opportunity to prove that he's for Jesus. It's just at the wrong time. Thankfully, again, it's not a lethal, injury, and Jesus is able to. Of course, Jesus could have healed him no matter what, but is able to heal him. Matthew 26:52.
Then Jesus said to him, put your sword back in its place, for all those who take up the sword shall perish by the sword. Or do you think that I cannot appeal to my Father, and he will at once put at my disposal more than 12 legions of angels? How then will the scriptures be fulfilled, which say that it must happen this way?
Okay, so he's really saying you're going against what God has ordained, and and he said that a few minutes ago as well. Certainly, if we take up the sword, we'll live by the sword. That makes perfect sense. If you do violence, then you're going to live by violence. I'm thinking of all these riots that are going on in the United States today. They're doing it, and they're righteous, right? They're righteous riots. They're standing up for somebody, illegal aliens, but you know, they're righteous. And what happens? People die. It's just inevitable. Luke 22:51.
But Jesus answered and said, stop, no more of this. And he touched his ear and healed him.
So Jesus takes care of any evidence that there's been foul play.
I'll put that right back for you.
You're not hurt. You're not really hurt. So he does take care of the slave's ear, and takes care of any liability that Peter would have by taking care of it. By the way, that's the only time Jesus ever healed a violent injury, and this is the last healing that he performed while on earth. As we said, had Peter been arrested, then being the leader of the church, the early church, would have probably not taken place. But Jesus, as you can see, is determined to go to the cross. At any point of all this, he could have escaped, but he knew that even though that was his desire as a human being to not have to face that cross, and now this is something my Sunday school class said that I never even thought much about. They said, well, yes, the physical things that he was going to have to go through were horrible, but what about the moment when his Father turns his back on him? You know, we talked about the physical things are horrible. What about that moment when God turns his back on him? that was probably
Crushing.
even more crushing than the physical things that were going to happen to him. And I just never had thought about that part of dying for our sin. The moment that God looked away. My God, why have you forsaken me? Let's see. When we as Christians choose to use violence to solve things, or, you know, there used to be all kinds of things with abortion clinics, and it's not that it's wrong to stand up or stand against abortion. It's okay to do that. It's not okay to do any of God's work with violence in it. And although we are called to different causes at times, and any one of us can be called to a different cause, what is our ultimate cause? There's only one.
Share the gospel.
Share the gospel. That's right. That's our first cause. And anything else is above and beyond that. But if you don't do your first cause, those other causes are really, they don't accomplish much, you know. That wasn't the Great Commission, go and stop abortions. That wasn't, you know, and again, it's not that it's wrong, it's just, it's not first. But it's easy in our day of everybody has a cause to get on board with something and not even realize, oh, I might be putting this before what God really wants me to do. Paul tells us that this is how Christians are supposed to handle things in Romans 12:18.
If possible, so far as it depends on you, be at peace with all men. Never take your own revenge, beloved, but leave room for the wrath of God. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. But if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he's thirsty, give him a drink. For in so doing, you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good.
Okay? So, you know, the way we're supposed to treat our enemy is the opposite of what the world says we're supposed to do. The world says we're supposed to treat them like they treat us, or worse, hurt them, or get them back, or overcome them.
We were talking today, the movie, The Shack, taught me more about forgiving somebody in that, because if you hang on to it, God can't do his work. To you forgive and give it to God, then he can deal with that person. And that made such an impression on me. I know it's a Christian movie, but some people didn't jihad with all that you talk about.
Yeah.
But that part of it really helped me understand and to do it, to be able to do it.
Let go of it.
Yeah.
Well, so many times you just feel like, well, I have a right to get back here because I've been harmed.
Oh, but he can do so much more than we can.
That's right. And he wants to do it. Vengeance is his, not ours. And we could get it wrong if we try to handle it ourselves.
We don't know the heart.
We don't know the heart. We don't know. Plus, we don't know what else he's doing. He's working all things together for our good. We don't know what he's doing there. Let's see. So give room for God to work, basically, is what he's saying. Interfering with God's plan can stop whatever he has going on in process. Also, talking about prayer, I'm just going to kind of jump back to talking about prayer. Even though we can't change the mind of God, the way God carries through his plans is through our prayers. Let me give you an example of that. I might be praying for someone to be saved, and I might have been praying 10, 20 years for that person to be saved. That may be the very way God enacts his plan, which is to save that person. But if I give up and say, well, I'm not going to pray anymore, if God plans to save that person, he's still going to get saved. I just won't get to be a part of what God is doing. So he works through people's prayers. He works through even when we get things wrong. He works through his people. That's how he's designed things to work. And so to be a part of what God's doing, that requires us to be in prayer with him. So far as it depends on us, we are to remain at peace with all men and trust God's sovereignty to accomplish what he's trying to accomplish. Jesus reminds Peter that he could have called down a legion of angels, 12 legions of angels, 60,000 angels. That would have been enough to take care of things. But that's not what God wanted. That wasn't God's will or his timing. When we take things into our own hands, we pull out the sword, we do what we want, and then we turn to God and ask for patience and understanding from him after we've done it our way. It sounds like us, doesn't it? Okay, we're now moving to lesson G. And we're going to be going pretty fast and furious to this one. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you when I skip pages so you can know. We're going to start with Matthew 26, 55, and 56.
At that time, Jesus said to the crowd, "Have you come out with swords and clubs to arrest me as you would against a robber? Every day I used to sit in the temple teaching, and you did not seize me. But all this has taken place to fulfill the scriptures of the prophets." Then all the disciples left him and fled. Okay, so here we see all the disciples depart from him just as he told them that was going to happen. But he's kind of mocking the crowd. It takes all of you to come get one man. And he's also saying, I've been sitting there in plain sight all this time, and y'all didn't do anything to me. Well, they were afraid of the crowd. But the other thing, did y'all know that had they captured him and had they killed him in the temple yard, they wouldn't have gotten in trouble. They could kill someone, execute someone in the temple yard, and the Romans...
So they were their own justice, in their own,
Yeah, Romans pretty well let it happen. So, but they were scared of the crowd, that, you know, that if they did something to Jesus, the crowd would get
they
them.
needed the Romans to be the bad guys.
Huh?
They needed the Romans to be the bad guys.
They needed the Romans to be the bad guy, and so did God, because that way Gentiles are also responsible for Jesus' death. You know, so again, God working it out according to his plan.
Yeah, there's a lot of history there about the governments and how both of them were over, and there were Jewish police and
Well, and what she's talking about is that the Jews, when they were captured, the Romans tried, anybody that the Romans captured, it's okay, Kim. It's okay. Anybody that the Romans captured, they tried to make them act like Romans. They tried to make them serve their gods. They had to serve do their laws. They wanted them to accept their culture, their language, and their pagan gods. And the Jews resisted pretty much everything. They resisted the culture, they resisted the gods for sure, and just all of Roman life. And after a period of time, the Romans realized, no matter what we do, we're not going to get these people to submit and worship our gods. And so they backed off from that, and they said, okay, you can worship your God. So that's huge, y'all. Like all the places that Rome conquered, they took over and put their stuff on the people that they conquered. But the Jews, they couldn't do it with. I think that's very significant. So the Jews had their own laws, and basically their laws were carried out through the synagogue. Their laws were carried out by their religious leaders because they were, in turn, their political leaders. The Sanhedrin were considered more the political side of things, but they were all priests. So that's who ruled the nation of Israel. And with that, they were given quite a few privileges within the temple grounds. Within the temple grounds, they were, like you said a while ago, kind of a law unto themselves. and they could pretty well do whatever they wanted to within there that Rome would not get involved with.
So that's why it says later, like, this is not my business, why don't y'all take care of your own business? Right, at some point somebody said that, like, why are y'all giving them to me?
Oh, yeah,
Conscious power.
yeah, yeah,
One of this is your business.
Yeah,
right.
Why are you involving me?
right, exactly right.
Not wanting to convict you.
Not, yeah, that's true. The Roman solution for peace was again to let the Jews be exempted from a lot of things they made other cultures do. Let's see. It's mentioned here that the apostles often portrayed themselves in not such a positive light. Like, we're reading about Peter. Peter's light's not positive at the moment. Now, later on, it becomes pretty positive, but right now, he's just an impetuous young man. But Steve is commenting here that what that means is that that's just more proof at the authenticity of the Bible. Because these were the writers of the Bible. If they wanted to, they could have cleaned up their act in their words, and it wouldn't be authentic. But because they admit to who they really are, it lends to the authenticity of the Bible. So we see that at this moment, God is allowing Satan to have the upper hand over Jesus. This was predicted back in Genesis 3:15. Let's go ahead and read that first, and then we'll look at Luke 22. It's right after Luke 22:52 and 53. Or maybe it's not.
We're Genesis, I have you,
Okay.
I saw the Mark 14.
Okay.
Genesis 3:15. And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise you on the head, and you shall bruise him on the heel.
Okay. The seed of the woman. Does a woman have a seed?
No.
Not typically. There's only one woman who ever had a seed, and that was Mary. Okay? The seed generally comes from the male, not from the woman. And so the only person, we're talking about the family of God there then, because the seed was given through the woman in this case, the virgin birth. And it's a singular seed. It's not the seeds. It's one seed. And so it's talking about the virgin birth. And so God is saying that there's going to be an ongoing fight between God's people and Satan's people, an enmity. And he says, one day he shall bruise your head. Well, that is this day. That is talking about the resurrection, the crucifixion. That's when Satan bruises Jesus' head. He's put to death, but we know he doesn't remain dead. So but now when Jesus and he shall bruise you, you shall bruise him on the heel, meaning he's going to bruise him on the heel. That's when Jesus is put to death. But then one day, Jesus is going to bruise Satan on the head. That comes at the end of the world when he is completely taken out and sent to the lake of fire. Okay, does that make sense? But did I ever look at that as talking about Christ's crucifixion? I really didn't. Until now. Let's see. Okay, Luke 22:52. I made you skip over that a few minutes ago, I think.
Okay. Then Jesus said to the chief priests and the officers of the temple and elders who had come against him, have you come out with swords and clubs as you would against a robber? While I was with you daily in the temple, you did not lay hands on me, but this hour and the power of darkness are yours.
I feel like we just read that. We just read something very similar to it.
Yeah, I just looked back to see that, because it's Matthew.
Matthew and Luke. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we did just read that.
I didn't read the right thing.
Yeah, you did. If your teacher just knew what book y'all were in, I don't know. Okay. All right, well, it does say the same thing. So now I'm going to be doing quite a bit of skipping.
Let's back up.
Okay. Sure.
About the head and the heel.
Okay.
It says, Jesus is struck on the heel, indicating this blow won't be strong enough to destroy Christ. But Christ will die on the cross as a result of Satan's blow, but Jesus rises again. And by his resurrection, Christ conquers Satan's power, only power, which is the power of death. The second battle comes much later when Christ one day strikes Satan on the head, meaning a fatal blow.
A fatal blow, and that
Yeah.
comes at in the end.
It's bruised on the heel,
And that's not a fatal.
Satan gets struck on the head.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay.
He gets whacked.
Yeah.
One's a bruise, one's a fatal blow.
Right. Right.
I've read through it and I didn't even.
I actually had that highlighted, but I had just skipped over it. So good thing you were here.
No, thanks for letting me. I was scanning, looking for the next time I read. And saw
Well,
that.
God pointed it out.
Here we go.
The purpose of trials, we know, we've studied about why do we have to go through trials. It's to grow us spiritually. And we are not any better than our master. We're not above our master. If Jesus went through these trials, we too are appointed to go through trials. Now here's something I hadn't ever really seen before. It says that persecution often involves not just someone directly opposing you. That's what I always think of. I think of, well, I've not suffered much persecution where because I'm a believer, people put me down, maybe a little, but not a tremendous amount like they do in other countries. But Steve is saying persecution is not always direct opposition. Persecution involves temptation leading to sin. Well, if that's persecution, I am involved in that on a daily basis. On a daily basis, I am tempted to sin. On a daily basis, and what he's talking about here, this is spiritual warfare. That's how Satan attacks us, probably more often than any other way, by tempting us to sin. And when we give into it, we're playing on his team. And when we refrain from it, we are playing on God's team. But the first step is recognizing what it is that we're in the middle of. And I don't think yes, I know I'm being tempted, but I've never thought of it as persecution. And I've never thought of it as being as relentless as I'm thinking of it now. You know, we're constantly being tempted, constantly. And I guess I just didn't think of that I guess I thought of that as a minor battle, rather than perhaps his greatest tool. What do y'all have any thoughts about that?
Yeah. That's amazing. How it's pointed out there, yeah, it's amazing. Wow.
And recognizing it is, it's like identifying that you're an alcoholic is number one step in getting healed from it. Okay, so identifying that we're being persecuted. Now, I can tell you that for the last several weeks, I have felt such spiritual battles, or such battles, and I knew they had to be spiritual because they were some of them so horrendous. I mean, really took me down physically as well as spiritually. And one in particular, not a whole bunch, one in particular, but I mean, it took me about 4 days for my body to even start feeling normal again. I'll just tell you, I had a huge anxiety attack. Huge. How many hours, John? Hours. And I didn't know if I'm not used to having anxiety like that. And I prayed all the way through it. I can't even imagine what would have happened had I not been able to pray and get some peace during it. But so much the next few days, like I said, I feel like I'm not over it, or I'm flinching at things. It was a spiritual, and it had to do with church. It had to do with God's work. It was a spiritual attack. I woke up at midnight trembling. And I'm thinking, and I've asked God, what was this all about? what was this for? What's my message that I'm supposed to learn from this? And one of the messages is, since Journey to Bethlehem, I haven't been having my private, quiet time with the Father.
Mm.
You know, I've just been caught up in working, doing things, not doing things.
Yeah.
The main thing.
Right.
And I mean, that's one way Satan works. He gets us caught up in doing what's not the main thing. Not bad things, but not the right thing. And so that was one of the lessons. The other is, a couple of days later, my devotion was, Danielle, I know, it didn't say Danielle, but it did to me. Danielle, I know what your day is going to be like. I already know what's planned, and you don't. And you don't need to worry about it. All you need to do is trust me, and I will take care of your day, no matter what comes up. So, I mean, was that not a 1-2 from the Father? You know, it's the same answer, but boy, do I need reminding way too often. Just trust the Father and stop worrying about things you can't manage. And no matter what it is, even if it had been the worst thing that my anxiety attack was about, even if it had been that horrible, bad thing, I can trust God to get me through that horrible, bad thing. Instead of worrying about it, instead of me doing stuff, I can trust God to get me through that bad thing. And, you know, that it's the same answer. Why do I need that lesson so many times? And I have a feeling y'all might need that lesson occasionally too.
Oh, definitely. Thank you for sharing.
You know, doggone it. But anyway, a new reminder. So when you are being persecuted, sometimes you're just being tempted to sin, and that's not just a just, but you hear what I'm saying. Jesus suffered a horrendous battle. Job suffered a horrendous battle. And in that time when Job suffered, it did not, God did not bring the government against Job. He didn't bring his friends and put Job down and tell him, you can't worship God. What did he do to Job? Or what did he allow to happen to Job? He allowed that the hardships of life to be so hard, they removed his joy obeying God. And I mean, we know how hard they were. His family, his illness, his wealth, everything was attacked by Satan to Job. But it wasn't persecution like we've defined it before, which is you can't worship God. It was the day-to-day struggles. And so Job says, though he slay me, I will hope in him. Nevertheless, I will argue my ways before him. Job believed that he was not in the wrong or wasn't receiving this tribulation because of sin. He didn't understand, and so he wanted to argue his case. Why are you allowing this to happen? I don't get it, God. I don't get it. How many times do you and I refer to Job? God allowed Job to suffer so that we could get through some really tough times and see that it's not always about our sin that puts us in that place, but God allows tribulation in our life, and it's for a purpose. And if it's the same purpose that he allowed this huge tribulation in Jesus Christ's life, you know, this huge tribulation of being sent to the cross, what was the purpose? Salvation of the world. And so God works things together for the good, not in our ways, not how we like them, not how we want them, but in his ways, and it's for the good. And so that's the other thing I can trust. That doesn't mean I'm going to be, that life is going to be easy or that it's not going to hurt. It just means I can trust him in it and through it. And he also tells us he's not going to allow us to be tempted above what we are able. Do you have 1 Corinthians 10:13 there?
No temptation has overtaken you, but such as is common to man. And God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you're able, but with the temptation will provide the way of escape also, so that you will be able to endure it.
Okay? So, not only does he allow tribulation, he promised us to be with us through it, and he promised to give us a way to get through it. This is all just more evidence that we are in the battle with God. Him even allowing all this tribulation or temptations or all these things, we are in the battle with God. And again, when we side with God, we are being his foot soldiers. And when we're siding with Satan, we're being his foot soldiers. Okay, we're going against our Father. It says here that we neglect the discipline of our faith and fall into sin. And I wish that was hard to do, but the truth is it's easy to do. Resist the enemy's schemes, and you're battling with God and giving Christ glory when we do that. In Matthew 26:57, Jesus' trial begins. By the way, he has 4 different trials. This is one of them.
Those who had seized Jesus led him away to Caiaphas, the high priest, where the scribes and the elders were gathered together. But Peter was following him in a distance as far as the courtyard of the high priest, and entered in and sat down with the officers to see the outcome. Now the chief priests and the whole council kept trying to obtain false testimony against Jesus so that they might put him to death. They did not find any, even though many false witnesses came forward. But later on, 2 came forward and said, "This man stated, I am able to destroy the temple of God, to rebuild it in 3 days." The high priest stood up and said to him, "Do you not answer? What is that these men are testifying against you?" But Jesus kept silent, and the high priest said to him, "I adjure you by the living God that you tell us whether you are the Son of the Christ, the Son of God." Jesus said to him, "You have said it yourself. Nevertheless, I tell you, hereafter you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven."
Okay, that's quite a passage there. It covers a lot of territory, but let's break it down a little bit. The trials that Jesus is involved in, the very first one is at Annas' house. And remember, he was the high priest appointed by the nation of Israel, but because he didn't get along with Rome, Rome put Caiaphas in his place. And so that's the one we read mostly about. The Jewish justice system required there to be witnesses before you could prosecute anyone. And did you notice how many people did they interview to try to find 2 witnesses that agreed? They just needed 2 that would agree with each other. It says that many false witnesses came forward. So many people tried to come and testify against Jesus, but because they never had the same story, they couldn't use that as proof that he had done anything wrong. Eventually, 2 men testified that Jesus claimed to be able to destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days. But their testimonies differed a little bit. However, by this time, the priests were so tired that they decided that it was close enough. So a lot of laws were broken during Jesus' trial. A lot of Jewish laws were broken. By the way, the account of those 2 men who testified against Jesus, one's in Matthew and one's in Mark, and they don't, like I said, quite agree, but close enough for that night. In Jewish law, you are required. Now, I've always wondered why Jesus didn't speak when he was asked if he was the Christ. I've always wondered that in his trial. Well, I found out. In Jewish law, you're not allowed to speak if you can incriminate yourself. And you particularly are not to speak if the testimony is a lie. You're just supposed to remain silent. So the first time when they asked Jesus to speak and say who he was following the law, which of course he would have done because he didn't sin. So he was following the law and he remained silent. But then the chief priest says, let's see how he exactly put it. I adjure? Is that the word he used? Yeah. It says, Jesus kept silent, and the high priest said to him, I adjure you by the living God, you tell us whether you are the Christ, the Son of God. And when he said, I adjure, what he's doing is, I'm swearing you in now. And by law of the Jews, if you got sworn in, you had to speak then. Okay, so the first time, it was the law that he couldn't speak. The second time, it was a law that he had to speak. All in the same trial, but that's why. Again, I've always wondered why he didn't just say it.
But my question is, when he did say it, it still didn't make,
Still didn't what?
it didn't, to me it didn't, maybe to them it did. But he said, I assure you in this day, whatever, he said, hereafter you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven.
I think that's always been riddled to me.
Well, here's what bothers me. When he says it's as you say. Or let's see, what exactly words did he say?
He said, nevertheless,
You have said it yourself.
You have said it yourself. What that means in their language is what you're saying is correct.
Okay, all right, you see.
Okay, so when we put it in their language, then that makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's as you say to us, we sound like, it's almost like we're thinking, are you just playing games with him? Yeah,
Or
yeah,
something.
yeah, but no, it means when they say that, that means what you have said is correct.
Okay, well,
That answers that, huh? That clears up a lot of these little things that have niggled me through the years, you know, of why is it said like that? Let's see. And in verse 64, when Jesus responds under oath saying, you have said it, meaning you are speaking the truth. So that's the words they use. You are speaking the truth. And Mark's gospel adds, I am. So again, we have the identity of God being stated in Mark's gospel. He is the Son of God. He's the Messiah. Jesus says, one day you'll see me in my glory. And in that day, you'll realize just how correct your words are right now. Okay, so what you're saying is correct. You're speaking the truth. And one day you'll see just how correct you are. Now, the Jews did something else that was illegal that night. First of all, you're not supposed to have a trial at night if you're Jews. Did I already say that?
No, you said you can't arrest anyone. Now you
Okay. You can't have the trial either. And not only can you not have the trial, you can't have the trial and convict them in the same night. Okay? So they've just broken many rules. Well, the other thing they did that they weren't supposed to do is they abused Jesus then. After the trial, they started beating him, spitting on him, and they rendered him through this. They pulled out the chin hairs of his. They did everything they could to torture him so much that it rendered him unrecognizable before he left the trial. Okay? That, you know, I don't guess I realized all that happened before the flogging and you know.
Yeah.
Okay, now I want you to look at your page of scriptures that I gave you, and I hope I have mine.
There was one thing that said like 33 rules were broken.
Oh, okay.
How that happened somewhere in here.
Okay.
Maybe coming up on.
No.
So like 33 or
33 laws were broken.
Yeah.
We're going to jump to 1 Peter 2:22 on the scriptures that I gave you. You want me to read it?
No, I got it.
Okay. Go for it. First Peter 2:22. Yes, on this sheet. On the sheet I handed out. It's on the second
To the right.
second column.
Oh, I see.
I'm used to it saying, he who committed no sin, nor was any deceit found in his mouth. And while being reviled, he did not revile in return. While suffering, He uttered no threats, but kept entrusting himself to him who judges righteously. And he himself bore our sins in his body on the cross so that we might die to sin and live in to righteousness. For by his wounds we are healed.
Okay? So, it just, Peter, you can see how much he's grown up here, okay? He's now writing to the church, and he says, the man who committed no sin. He didn't even revile anybody that were doing all these horrible things to him. He took the suffering.
And it's somewhere in there it said because he was without sin, he had to follow, he volunteered to do this. And so any rebuke or anything I can't do would have been against the Father's will.
Right, yeah, so yeah, even defending himself
Yeah,
would have been
defending
against
himself or
the
anything.
Father's
And a
will.
lot of it, he was blindfolded, so he couldn't even
He couldn't even
witness
protect
when it was
himself.
coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Hebrews 12:2.
Fixing your eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God.
So Jesus kept his eyes on God during this time, and the prize set before him, which was the joy of us being part of his family. So that's what Jesus kept his eyes on to continue going through these horrendous things that are happening. And then finally Isaiah 55, where we see these things have been predicted.
It's just above. That's what you just
Oh.
read.
50, okay. The Lord has opened my ear, and I was not rebellious. I turned not backward. I gave my back to those who strike, and my cheeks to those who pull out the beard. I hid not my face from the disgrace and spitting, but the Lord God helps me. Therefore I have not been disgraced. Therefore I have set my face like a flint, and I know that I shall not be put to shame.
Can't you just imagine him setting his face like flint?
And that was scripture prophesied.
Yeah, this is the prophecy of what was it long before it happened.
500 years.
But so all those things, even the plucking of the beard, was prophesied ahead of time. And you know, when we talked about him knowing what was coming, he knew what was coming. He knew what was coming. He wrote it, y'all. He knew what was coming. And but then he set his face like flint, and he was not put to shame because he did not rebel against it. He didn't try to fight against it. He didn't try to get out of it. He went through the full measure of suffering because he believed, because that was the will of God. What suffering would we have if we had to pay for our own sin? He paid for all our sin. Okay. We were doing lots of scriptures tonight, but we're almost finished with them. We are now in Matthew, and I'm skipping to Matthew 26:69. So y'all have it on this page, since you probably can't find it in your notes at this point.
That's exactly the pages I'm seeing.
Is that Matthew on the left?
Yes, it's Matthew on the left,
69?
69.
I got 68. Oh, on here?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry, I meant 65, start with 65. And it's
Okay,
written
in the
there, it's
middle.
just written differently.
Oh,
But 65, you can start on here.
Oh, okay, because it was here too.
Okay.
This is bigger. I'm gonna do this. Then the high priest tore his robes and said, "He has blasphemed. What further need do we have of witnesses? Behold, now you have heard the blasphemy. What do you think?" They answered, "He deserves death." There's more.
We'll stop right there and then we'll pick it up here in a second. So, by the way, the other thing that's not supposed to happen is the high priest is not supposed to tear their clothes, except when there's blasphemy. That means someone has lied, and so they can. So he actually could tear his wrote, I guess,
Mm.
except that it was a lie. And so, what is your judgment? Let's quickly look up at John 11:48 before we keep on going here.
If we let it go on like this, all men will believe in him, and the Romans will come and take away both. But one of them, Caiaphas, who was a high priest that year, said to the you know nothing at all, nor do you take into account that it is expedient for you that one man die for the people and the whole nation not perish.
Okay, they're talking about Jesus here, and this is their whole impetus behind getting rid of Jesus. He's been doing all kinds of miracles, and if they believe in him and follow him, then they're going to lose the kingdom as far as they're concerned. So this is what's caused all these religious people to get together and come after Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
He's given the motives there. Okay, now we're going to jump back to, did you read that he spit in his face?
No.
Okay, what is your judgment? Okay, 66.
Then they spit in his face and struck him. Some slapped him, saying, Prophesy to us, you Christ. Who is that struck you? Now Peter was sitting outside the courtyard, and the servant girl came up to him and said, You also were with Jesus the Galilean.
Okay, we're going to stop right there, and let me go back up to, he was blindfolded, as Donette said a while ago, and they were asking, who struck you? But, again, he couldn't defend against himself being blindfolded. Being spit at was like one of the most worst insults that you could have, that we saw back in Isaiah 55, that he knew the spitting was coming as well. Did you know that today a Jew, a true Orthodox Jew, if you say Jesus in their presence, they will spit? Yes. So, okay, now we're getting to Peter and his denial, and that'll be the last thing we go through tonight. Huh?
It's rude.
It's rude, yeah. So Peter's sitting out in the courtyard. By the way, y'all, John went into the courtyard too, and actually talked to the guardian to letting Peter come in. Peter is still flinching, okay? He's still dealing with his pride, because he's not going to deny Christ, and he stood up for him. But pride is what Peter is dealing with. And y'all, when we feel put down, what are we dealing with?
Oh, yeah.
Pride. And do we ever do that? Do we ever deal with our
Or
pride?
even
And
when you feel like you don't even have to, you might perceive it that way.
yeah, even if you perceive it, that it's your pride you're dealing
Yeah.
with. Yeah.
And somebody might not even,
Think what you're thinking.
yeah,
Yep. Yeah.
calling myself out there.
Well, we all deal with that. We all deal with pride, and we all want to look good, right? I mean, we want to look like we know what we're doing, are capable people, are good at what we do. We want to. Well, that's part of our pride, and sometimes it takes over, and it has taken over for Peter tonight. And so he's fixing to fall on his face, just like Christ told him he was going to. Okay, so now you can read the rest of those verses, and we'll finish
Okay.
talking about Peter.
But he denied it before them all, saying, I do not know what you mean. And when he went out to the entrance, another servant girl saw him and said to the bystanders, This man was with Jesus of Nazareth. And again he denied it with an oath, I do not know the man. After a little while, the bystanders came up and said to Peter, Certainly you too are one of them, for your accent betrays you. Then he began to invoke a curse on himself and to swear, I do not know the man. And immediately the rooster crowed. And Peter remembered the saying of Jesus, Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. He went out and wept bitterly.
Okay. So Peter finds himself in the courtyard because he wanted to go in. He wanted to follow Christ. But I want you to hear what he heard when he got in that courtyard. He heard the beating. He heard what was going on. He saw, well, I don't know how much he saw, but he was hurting knowing that Christ was hurting. during that time. So, you know, we can say lots of things about Peter, but he was there hearing all that. By the way, John was also there. John did not fear for his life at this point in time. Of course, John also knew Caiaphas, but still, they were both there. And God hadn't intended either one of them to be persecuted during this time. So Peter goes through, and of course, one person says something. Nope, he didn't do it. Second person says something, and then he swears that he didn't do it, you know, by an oath. By God, I don't even know him, you know. And then the third time, it says, they recognize his accent. And Steve says it's kind of like having a southern accent. People know if you're from Galilee. Okay. So people know if you're from the South. And then he starts cursing and swearing, I do not know this man. And then, of course, the rooster crows. And Peter is so sad then because, indeed, he did just what Christ predicted he would do. He denied him 3 times. Peter was not repudiating who Jesus was. He wasn't saying Jesus wasn't the Christ. He simply was a scared man saying stupid things. Mm-hmm. Y'all, when we get scared or angry, or do we say stupid things? Sometimes we do. And then he had just, like I said, witnessed Jesus being unmercifully beaten, and did not want to follow suit for sure. Do you have 1 Peter 3:14
Yes.
through 17?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But even if you should suffer for the sake of righteousness, you are blessed. And do not fear their intimidation, and do not be troubled, but sanctify Christ as Lord in your hearts. Always be ready to make a defense to everyone who asks you to give an account for the hope that is in you, yet with gentleness and reverence. And keep a good conscience, so that the thing in which you are slandered, those who revile your good behavior in Christ, will be put to shame. For it's better, if God should will it so, then you suffer for doing what is right, rather than doing what is wrong.
And we've heard verses too that say, say you did something wrong and you suffered for it. But God is honored when we do something right and we suffer for it. He is given honor and glory during this time. And so you can see how far Peter has come since the death of Christ. Resisting suffering sometimes may mean that we're disobeying God. Now, to me, you have to determine what God's will is at any particular point in your life, and then trust Him through what His will is. And if you don't know what His will is, you might as well go ahead and tell Him, because He knows you don't know what His will is. And you're going to have to show me, God. You're going to have to show me what to do here. Jesus did not fight back. There are times we are to not fight back, even though we are being wronged and treated unjustly. The enemy just wants to lead us into sin. And so one way he does it is through trials and temptations. And it's 8:07, so this really wasn't an hour and a half lesson. It just felt like it. There's lots of scripture tonight, wasn't there?
Oh, that's good.
I
like this one. Yeah.
We went through 3 sections, but I felt like there was nothing in any one of these sections that...
Right, there were a lot of rabbit trails.
A lot of rabbit trails, that's right. So that's the reason I thought, let's just clean them off the slate and move on.
We still got the core of it.
Yeah. So, any comments?
It was a good lesson.